Hello and welcome back to the Wisdom in Christ podcast. This is episode 6, and today I am here with my brother, Donovan Anderson, and we're going to be talking about who knows exactly what, probably a little bit about how you got into business.
Mm-hmm.
We've done a podcast now with Benjamin, with Caleb, so we got to have all the bros here.
The whole family.
The whole family. Maybe I should do the whole family.
The whole family.
I thought it would be cool to do Grandma Leah and have her tell stories of growing up way back in the day.
Yeah.
You know, when she lived in a whole different world. So Donovan, you're my older brother, and you are 4 years older than me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're about 30 years old.
So I'll be 31 this month, actually.
This month?
Yeah. March is my birth month.
So what got you into business? How did you get into it and get started?
Yeah. So let's see, how far back do you want me to go? I have always been kind of creatively minded. I've always been kind of independent. And I've kind of felt like I've always wanted to do something on my own, right? When I first got into the workforce, I just had small jobs. You know, my very first job was actually peeling TP pole logs for Craig Calder. Yeah, with a draw knife, the old-fashioned draw knife. Yep.
Our Boy Scout leader.
Yeah, back when Boy
Scouts is a thing.
Yeah, so
for us.
Anyway, I got paid $7 a log, and I could do a log in 20 minutes. So for a 12-year-old, that was pretty good money, right? And so I did that for a little while, but I only did that for maybe 2 or 3 paychecks worth of work. And then I helped Craig with a friend of mine. We did cabins and wood staining and stuff like that. And then after that, I worked at the movie theater for a couple months, hated it. So I walked out of there. And then I worked at Wendy's for a little while. I never actually worked inside. I just cleaned up the grounds. Trying to think of what other jobs I had. My first big job, though, was actually BHI here in Vernal. I worked for BHI. I was just a hand for electrical. I worked for the engineering company here in Vernal, too, that one for a little while, a few months. Anyway, I just was always hopping jobs, and none of them ever felt quite right. Anyway, fast forward after that, I served a 2-year mission in El Salvador, got back, and then when I first got back, again, it was just kind of just random odd jobs, one after the other, right? I worked at Staples. I did odd jobs for friends and family to earn money, that sort of thing. But then I've always wanted to, like I said, own my own business, but I knew I wanted to be in the video realm, right? I wanted to create videos. I enjoyed photography as well. I was terrible when I first started. Bought my first camera in October of 2014, I think. So almost 10 years ago now. And bought my first camera, and then I just played around with it. And then I had jobs at, like I said, Staples. I got a job at Mountain America Credit Union for a little while. I worked at the Uinta County building, the
commissioner building.
No, not the commissioner building, the county building.
The county.
Yeah, it's just the conference center. That's what it is.
Okay, yeah.
I worked at the conference center. And then, I never really loved all those jobs. I kind of enjoyed Mountain America just because I like finance. But then I felt drawn to quit that job once my wife and I started, once Jessica and I started the Dave Ramsey Baby Steps. And so we stopped borrowing money, and I didn't want to be a part of that world. So I kind of ran into that moral conundrum of I can't work at a place where I encourage people to get debt when I personally don't believe in it. So I quit there, started working at V6 Media, worked there for a little while. And then in 2020, Jessica and I quit my job, and Jessica and I moved to Texas, and we started our business full time. Just kind of cold turkey, actually. We just relied on, we had some retained earnings from selling, or not retained earnings, excuse me. We had some capital after selling our house. And we just decided to rely on that if we needed to, move to Texas, live there for 3 years, and started a photo and video business full time. And we just kind of went into it. I wouldn't say cold turkey because we'd been doing on the side. Like I said, I got my first camera in 2014, October, but and so I've been doing it on the side a little bit here and there, but I never really run a business. Jessica and I had never really run a business until then. So that's what we did. Lived in Texas for 3 years. And then once my son Colson was born, we decided we can't live away from family. So we decided to move back. And here we are. That pretty much catches us up. So yeah, that's kind of what sparked, that's kind of the journey that I went on before actually starting our business.
So in 2020, during a pandemic, a lot of people don't have like jobs. A lot of people were wondering what they could do for money, for income. So it's kind of a risky, like of all the times to go into business, it was kind of a big personal risk, would you say? Or did you feel like it was less of a risk to try to work for yourself? Like, how did it feel? Yeah,
so March of 2020 was kind of, if I remember right, that was like the tipping point for when, like, okay, this whole pandemic thing might be more serious than we think, and nobody really knew what was going on. And then, narratives kept flipping on their heads as far as like, whether it was dangerous or not. And Jessica and I were of the opinion that we ourselves are in really good health, and we're just going to be as, cautionary as we can around other people that we feel like we need to be cautionary around. So in terms of risk, yes, there's a lot of risk, but at the same time, we actually found, because we started our business and we were doing weddings full time, which we'll get into that, but I'm actually transitioning out of weddings now and going into the professional video realm. But with weddings, there was this huge, because of the lockdowns and everything, there was a huge influx of people that just kind of went to the courthouse and got married, and decided to just get married and then postponed the actual party and reception. So we found there was actually like a huge wedding boom sometime in like 2021 and 2022 of people who got married, just went to the courthouse and just signed some papers because they had planned the wedding, and then they told all their guests and everyone that they were going to invite to their wedding, like, hey, we're postponing the party until the craziness of the world, calms down and things start to unlock and people start to go out again. And, regardless of what you believe around all of that, that's what they did. And so, yeah, there was risk, but it was kind of this weird emergent where the economy, at least the wedding economy, just came back full force. And we did quite well because of it, which tons of people were just booking. It was huge booking season. Like one of the biggest, I think it was 2021, one of the biggest booking seasons for weddings, because people were planning their party and their reception for the end of 21 and into 22, right?
2021 was
yeah, it was crazy. And so, but yes, you're right. It was risky. But as I mentioned, we had just sold our house and we had a substantial savings. Again, because like I said, we started following that Dave Ramsey plan. So we had no debt, we had no risk, and we had some cash that we could rely on. So even if we didn't work, we had enough to where if we didn't work at all, we could last for a long time. Even if we made zero income, we could live off of savings for long enough to where if we decided it wasn't working, we could always just come back to Vernal and just get a 9-to-5 if we felt like it. But
so like risky. When I say risky, I'm talking economically or in the perspective of somebody else that maybe wants to start a new business, that they're in the midst of a pandemic and it would be maybe scary for them. But for you, it sounds like it wasn't even really like a concern. You weren't really worried about the virus itself, even though in 2020 itself, maybe the wedding economy was a little slower. Your business in 2021 did so good that it sounds like
we did really well. And we didn't actually move out of the state of Utah until I think the end of August. I think September
of 2021
of 2020.
2020.
And so I think it was early September is when we actually like drove into Texas and actually started, settling down there, so to speak. And so
so what was that like going from Vernal, Utah? I mean, you went to El Salvador
Yeah, I was like,
so it's not like
I served a mission in El Salvador, so
you know, kind of.
So
but what was it like? You know,
the funny thing is Jessica actually had less culture shock when we moved to Texas than I did, because she served a mission in South Carolina, so she was already familiar with the Deep South, right? She was already used to saying y'all, and she was already used to like having like a bazillion dollar stores on every corner. And like the whole thing was actually not surprising to her. The weather was not surprising. The biggest, I think the biggest surprise for us was you don't understand how geographically monstrous Texas is until you live there. And I know everyone says, oh, Alaska's bigger. Well, yeah, but you fly in Alaska. You don't drive across Alaska. Typically, right? Alaska, everyone has a pilot's license in Alaska because you fly everywhere. The climate's not suitable for driving from place to place, at least not over long distances. Texas, you drive everywhere. So we moved to a central area. It was right near Temple, Texas, if anybody's familiar with Temple. We're north of Austin, about 50 minutes, 45, almost an hour actually. And we put tons of miles on our cars. So I think that was, at least for me and Jessica, that was one of the biggest culture shocks. Was this place is huge. Like, it's huge. You have to drive, like, here we complain if we have to drive to Roosevelt. Like, oh man, I have to drive to Roosevelt. We drove, like, when we were doing weddings, like twice a month, we were driving to like Dallas and Houston and San Antonio, which all of those are at least 3 to 4 hour drives. And we were doing that twice a month. Sometimes some of them we did back to back, which was insane. And so, yeah, people just don't understand how completely massive. And by the way, this is like, you're driving from, let's say you're driving from Central Texas to Houston. Well, once you get to Houston, you're still an hour and a half from one end to Houston to the other. Like, that's how long it takes you from one end. You can drive for almost 2 hours and you'll be in Houston the whole time. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it's crazy. And so, yeah, we did tons of miles.
Well, can't you drive from one end of Texas to the other and it's still been, isn't it like you can drive like 24 hours or 12 hours?
It depends.
How long is it? Like, from one side, like the longest direction is probably like a 24-hour drive, isn't it?
It very well could be. Yeah, it's so long. We never did any drives that long. The longest drives we actually did in Texas was just when we came to visit Utah. Those are the longest drives we did. So, which is when we drove just up through Lubbock.
How long?
So it took...
Is that
21 hours to get to Vernal, but it took us, I think it was like between 7 and 10 hours. I can't remember. I have to look at a GPS now, but it took us between 7 to 10 hours just to get out of Texas. So Texas was literally 1/3 the drive. And then we went through, then went through New Mexico and Colorado and then got to Utah. So it took us all, to get through half of Texas is like almost as long as it takes to get all the way through Colorado, as an example. But anyway, yeah, so that was one of the things that we,
that you noticed.
That we noticed, yeah.
So from transitioning, you are working for yourself now. Mm-hmm. And you want to transition out of weddings into full-time professional videography work. Mm-hmm. So what inspired that? What inspires you about professional videographer work? Because I remember when you were younger, you and Melissa would make fake versions of I Dream of Jeannie with the camcorder.
Yeah, we'd make fake sitcoms.
Yeah, fake sitcoms. Yeah. And you'd watch them and they were pretty good. Like, even though they were pretty bad, they were like good.
So there's two answers to that question. The first answer is, or at least just kind of a funny story. The reason we did that is because Benjamin, I think first, but then he maybe taught me how to do it. I don't remember how that went down, but we learned that in those old sitcoms, one of the things they would do to make the magical genies disappear and reappear in the same shot is they would just have everyone freeze on set. They would stop recording and not touch the camera, make it on a tripod or, put it on a tripod or whatever. And then they would have the person step out of frame and then they would press play again, or they'd have them step out, change clothes, step back in, and, they would be in different clothes or whatever. So we figured out how to do that on Mom's old tape camcorder. And we could pause it and pause the recording, but it would be paused in that exact same spot. And then we could do the trickery and then bring it back in. So that was part of what inspired it, is because we figured out how to do that one little trick. And then that inspired us to continue to make those I Dream of Jeannie's like sitcom style kind of, imitation videos, because we figured out how to do that one little, that one little thing. So we're like, let's run with it, right?
You guys were making I Dream of Jeannie fan content.
Apparently, before
fan content was a big thing in today's world.
Oh man, it was something else. And so that's what we did. And then, so to answer the other part of your question of like why I'm transitioning out of weddings into professional media. And there's a couple of reasons for that. When I first started doing weddings, I actually was like, I can just do weddings forever. This is so much fun. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. But then what ended up happening is I learned something about myself, which I already knew, but I learned something about myself specifically in regards to my professional lifestyle. And that is that I have the utmost absurd amount of ADD, like ridiculous amounts. Like if I went to the doctor, they'd probably try to prescribe me with, whatever. But for me, the best treatment is just to actually just go out and do things randomly, right? And with weddings, it started to become that they were kind of repeat. That I was just doing them on repeat. You get the same shots. You do the same things every time. You get the same audio. You get when you edit the film, you do it the same every time. And there's obviously a level of dignity in that, because weddings are really important to lots of people. But I just started to get bored, and I didn't think I would, but I proved myself wrong, I guess. And I got bored, and so I was like, well, what's an area? And it's funny because just a couple weeks ago, Jessica asked me, if you could only do one type of videography, like video work, for the rest of your life, what would it be? And I had to think about that, because 2 years ago I would have said weddings, but now I wouldn't have said weddings, because there's not enough variation in weddings. They all operate the same, right? And I'm not speaking, I'm not trying to downput weddings. Every bride is unique and blah blah blah. But in terms of actually filming the wedding and editing it and putting it together, they're all the same. They really are.
For you, as the person doing the work.
Exactly. Yeah. I didn't want to go back into the explore phase of how to do weddings differently, because that would require a complete overhaul in how I advertise and book weddings. So a rule with professional video work is, if you want to do a specific type of content, you first need to create that content to appeal to the people who want that content. So an example of that is, if you want to do weddings, then you got to do a couple of them for free, build a portfolio, and show people, hey, these are the weddings I filmed, and this is how I filmed them. And so you should book with me. And you'll attract the type of clients that want to book those kind of weddings with you, right? So anyway, to answer Jessica's question that she asked me, what type of video work would you want to do professionally for the rest of your life? I said probably professional work, business advertising kind of work. And the reason is because
that'd be cool.
Well, not only is it be cool, be fun, but there's always something different. A business comes to you and says, hey, we have this idea, we have this vision. And it's always something kind of fun and unique and different. And it's not nearly as formulaic as weddings are. And so to satisfy that extreme ADD that I've got going on here, that's probably what I would do. So
you also probably feel the tedious work of editing. I mean, the first probably 20 weddings or 10 weddings were fun, because you're learning new skills, you're applying yourself, you're getting paid, you're serving people, but then you do that over and over and over again, and you're like, wow, maybe I want variety.
Correct. Yep, that's exactly right. And And some people are okay with that. Some people are okay with honing in and mastering a craft and doing it the same way every time. And that itches their brain the way they want it to. But that doesn't do it for me anymore. So I'm like, I got to branch out.
So basically that transition is going to feel kind of uncomfortable for you though. Because now you have all this habit, clients, way that you are comfortable with earning money. So how are you, is it just that you're using the excitement of it? Is it not as hard? Like, what does that transition look like for you?
So somebody that I really look up to, he's part of the Ramsey Network. His name is Ken Coleman. His expertise is in getting the right job and getting, basically getting into the right profession. Because his belief is that God has created every individual person with a purpose. And that purpose part of that purpose can be fulfilled in their professional life. Everyone is called to do something professionally. And it's not a specific job, it's a specific type of work. Some people like service jobs. Some people like technology problem solving jobs. Some people like, those are just some examples. One thing that he says in terms of transitioning from, either one type of business to another, or from a 9-to-5 to a self-employment, or whatever that transition professionally might be, is to don't get off the boat until you're close enough to the dock, right? Or I guess the way he might say it is like the other way around. Don't get off the dock until the boat is close enough to you, right? So basically what that means is if you're not ready to make the transition from the dock to the boat, as to push that example, then you're going to be jumping off and you're going to be swimming to the boat. And there's lots of unknown variables. There's lots of danger associated with that.
A couple sharks.
Who knows?
They might drive away before you see it.
Yeah. So the idea behind that analogy is, and I probably butchered it trying to paraphrase it, but the idea behind it is that if you're not ready to switch, then you kind of need to buckle up and pick yourself up by your bootstraps and get ready to switch. Most of the time, the readiness to switch is a combination of your side hustle, which is or whatever you're transitioning into, being profitable enough to sustain you, so that you don't have to use like emergency savings. That's basically the formula, right? And if you do have to for the first month or so, it's not a big deal as long as you have a really beefy savings account. But usually what they recommend is that your side hustle has, like, I think it's either 6 months or a year's worth of retained earnings before you transition into it. So that if something happens, if you experience a slow season or your industry shifts, your side hustle, your business or whatever you're transitioning into can function for up to 6 months to a year without any of your personal money having to be dumped into it.
Because of the volatility of new businesses, learning yourself, knowing yourself. Because running a business is like, you're really betting on yourself.
I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think it's like, I want to say that it's like 1 in 4 or lower small, like, new businesses actually succeed within the first 3 years. It's a really small number. I'm probably overestimating. It might be less than 25%. But yeah, small business is really risky, and it's because people do it the wrong way. That's actually part of the problem. First, they don't understand the dock to boat analogy. They're trying to get on the boat when it's 100 yards out into the ocean. And then the other thing they don't understand is they don't understand that, well, you have to spend money to make money. That's the classic thing. It's like, well, no, actually, the only money that you need to spend on let's say a small business that you're trying to start is on things that will create a return on investment. Those are the only things you spend money on. If your business starts to do really well and you have a lot of overhead and you can start buying, spending money on things that aren't necessary but kind of nice to haves or whatever, then that's a different conversation. But when you're first starting a business, don't get business loans. Well, don't get loans at all, but especially don't get SBAs, or no, not SBA. What is it called? Small business loans. Don't get those, and make sure that the boat's close enough to the dock before you get on. Like those are really the things that you need to be aware of, because most small businesses fail because the small business isn't ready to overtake the income that somebody was making at a 9-to-5.
So when you say that a lot of people fail starting a business, a lot of people fail, when you said that, I thought in my mind, well, that a lot of people hear that and they're going to be like, oh, I don't want to start a business. But really what I tell the viewers of this is that how many people do you know that picked up a guitar that kept playing? Right? Like, how many people do you know that started to learn how to play the piano or the guitar that kept with it? Very small percentage of people that start taking lessons, that start learning how to play, actually stick to it to learn how to do it. And it's a mindset thing. It's whether they believe they can, whether they're willing to stick to it, go through it. And so I think that fear that people might have when they read the statistic, oh, only certain percentage of new businesses succeed. Yeah, you need to be real with yourself and make sure you're doing things right, but don't be afraid. Understand that a lot of people fail trying to start anything. And so it's really up to you kind of as a person. What do you think about that? Yeah.
So let's see if I can address some of those things. One, statistics are for information. They don't look at a statistic and think like, oh, well, I could never do that. Just be aware that statistics exist for a reason. There's lots of variables actually in those statistics. And so the best thing you can do is the best antidote to fear is in the small business world is just information. And so if you have the right information, if you think, okay, I want to start a small business, I want to make it work. So what do I need to make that happen? And arm yourself with all the information that you can about starting a small business. Well, okay, what kind of small business do you want to start? Let's say you want to teach guitar lessons. You just mentioned the guitar. You say, okay, well, what do I need to teach guitar? I need a guitar, right? I personally need a guitar. I need teaching skills, and I need to start doing that. And so just kind of go out and do it on the side as much as you can. Start with low investment and then work your way up. Because I think what people think is they're like, I want to start a business. And so they go and they get a $10,000 business loan. And they're like, I'm going to buy all the stuff that I need. I'm going to buy the nicest guitar so that my students know that I mean business. I'm going to dump, $1,000 into Facebook ads. I'm going to hire somebody professional to do, to make the class structure for me, or, I'm going to hire an assistant. I'm going to get some office space. So I'm not doing it out of my garage, or whatever the case may be. And they try to jump into this level of business that they're not ready for. And they're like, well, it'll pay for itself because I can charge $100 a lesson or whatever. Well, the problem with that is you don't know how to run a business. You're just buying all of the things for a business. So when I say arm yourself with information, the most important information you can arm yourself with is just how do you run a business in that niche? And typically, you can find, things online. You pay a couple $100 for a course or whatever. But most of the time, the best way to do it is just to do it. And the other recommendation that I would probably make is to find mentorships. Because most people, using the example of like teaching guitar, most people will be totally willing to just let you like shadow them, for example. So you can reach out to other successful guitar teachers in your area and say, hey, I want to become a guitar teacher. Will you let me shadow some of your lessons with your students? And even offer to pay them, or offer to, take them out to lunch or something, and say like, hey, will you share with me some of your secrets? Most of the time, if they're a genuine person, they'll share with you everything. They'll be like, oh, I'd love to share this with you. I love it so much. I think you can do it too. Here's what I do, blah, blah, blah. And so
people are a lot less afraid of competition than you might think.
Oh, absolutely.
Me as a business owner, my first YouTube channel, I wanted nothing more than my friends to start doing YouTube, even in the same industry, because I knew there was plenty of people and money out there, and it was fun to work with my friends in the same industry.
In the photo and video industry, we call that community over competition. right?
Yeah.
You build instead of competing with each other, build a community with each other. And because community is the abundancy mindset and competition is the scarcity mindset. And so if you have a community mindset that you can build an incredible community under whatever profession you're doing, and instead of having competition, you have a community, then you'd be so surprised. I like that the example of that guitar teacher, he probably gets inquiries for students that he can't fulfill, right? He's probably overbooked.
Yeah, most of them are. He probably is a source of clients.
Probably a source of exactly.
Yeah, even lower level, you're a new guitar teacher, so you're not the same higher level.
Or he can send you clients that aren't the right fit for him, right? Because even in those industries, you find niche. You niche way down into your prospective clients, because one of the biggest mistakes people make in small business is they want to serve everyone. You're not going to serve everyone. You actually need to find a specific audience you want to serve and focus on them. Target, they call it your ICP, your ideal client profile. And you want to create an ideal client profile and focus on them.
So you get a few clients, hopefully at the start, then you can kind of gauge what you like about these clients, what you don't like about these ones, and use that to see what resonates with you in your business. Or?
Yeah, or you can even, yes. So you can start with a broader audience and then say, you know what, I like serving these people more so than these people. And you can start to kind of narrow down. It's not that you kick these people out. You just start to shift your business, usually by changing your pricing, by the way. Shift your business into a different market. And then the other people will just, the relationship will just end. They'll be like, you know what, it's not a good fit anymore, or we can't afford you anymore. And you say, no shame, no worries. Like, it was awesome working with you. Come back if you're ever interested again, right? And you just kind of slowly narrow down into kind of your ideal, because you're not going to get your ideal clients right off the gate, probably. You're probably going to have to work with some people that you don't like. And then you'll be like, you know what, that wasn't a fun experience, so I'm going to remove them from my ICP. So
when you went from working for somebody else to working for yourself, was it did you start making money fast enough because you already had done what you explained? Where you were already working a different job, you had a camera for a while, you had already done some, were you able to do that transition in the way that is described by Dave Ramsey's partner? Here's kind of
what we did. It took us, so like I said, I bought my first camera in October of 2014, but I didn't start really making any money in earnest for a couple of years. And that's actually pretty common. And that's why you need to start it as a side hustle and not just dive into it head first. Because you're probably not going to turn a profit in the first little while. I think that statistic is most small businesses don't turn profits in the first year or two. I think it takes them typically 3 years to start turning profits. And it's for that reason. It's because they started the business too soon. And so that statistic is a bit skewed. It's kind of scary when you first look at it. But then when you realize, like, well, if they would have just started doing this on the side first and spent that first two to 3 years funding the business with personal money until the business could fund itself and then generate profit, then that statistic would flip probably within a few years. But again, the reason that exists is because people are starting businesses too early. But that's what we did. We did photo and video on the side for years before we went full time. And so it was already making money. And the equation is this. Can your business profits scale linearly or even more so with hours worked? So let's say you have a full-time job and you're making $50,000 a year at your full-time job. And your side hustle makes you, let's say, $15,000 a year, but you're only putting, let's say you're only putting a couple hours a week into your side hustle. That's pretty good profit, right? And assuming you don't have any other expenses for your side business. So then you ask yourself, if I were to, instead of spending 5 hours a week on this small business or 10 hours a week or whatever it might be, if I spent 30 to 40 to 50 hours a week on this small business, are the profits going to scale linearly with the hours worked? If that's true, then you can pretty easily quit your full-time job, because you know that with the time that you saved quitting your full-time job, dumping into your small business, now let's say your small business is making $60,000 a year, more than your full-time job. And so and then it's, and then of course, to the moon from there, right?
Because you got all this time, you're focused on one thing, you're falling in love with it, you successfully transition, so you're confident. Yeah. Yep.
And then you can focus on optimization too. You can optimize the business, say, and optimization can go in typically just two ways. You can either do the same amount of work for the same amount of money in less time, or you can do the same amount of work for the same amount of time for more money, right? That's usually the way optimization works. You can optimize your pricing, or you can optimize your time. And so, yeah, you can just do it from there. But.
So you did a lot of art stuff when you were younger. Do you feel like one of the reasons that the continuous doing of wedding videos over and over is also maybe because you have a creative need that isn't, even though wedding videos are creative, it's still, is there a creative element too that you want?
Yeah, so I am very, very much, I'm not an analytical person. I'm what they call in the business there's like business personality tests. I don't know what the standard is called, but I'm what's called a dreamer. I have big ideas, and I am very flexible, and I'm pretty high in openness with those ideas and new ideas and trying something new. But I am not very detail oriented, just by nature. I'm very, very not detail oriented. And so I'm really good at creating big picture things, but when it comes to just those minute, tiny little details, I yawn, right? I fall asleep. And so, I think to answer your question, it's less about being a creative person and more about being yes, you're right. I am creative in the sense that I want to create things, but it's more about I have lots of big fantastical ideas, and I just really love to see if they work. I love to throw things out there, and if they work, then I can hone in, I can focus on that and enjoy doing it. And so I think it's a combination of kind of big picture thinking and then creativity.
Big picture thinking that really is the driving motivation behind the shift. The main one for you. Big picture.
Yeah, absolutely. Big picture. I love just big picture, big ideas. Whenever I pitch things to small businesses, if they want to work with me, like, we should do this thing, or I tell them like, this would be super fun, or if they have an idea, I'm like, let's expand it, whatever. So, yeah.
So basically you're confident now and you're able to produce income, even if, you're still building up your income over time and stuff. So how does it feel like as a person to know that you don't work for somebody else?
So there's that's a really loaded question. And let me tell you a little bit about myself personally before I get into that. So to answer your question, first I want to preface with this. It is totally that there's dignity in work, and don't feel like you have to work for yourself to be successful. There's nothing wrong with working for somebody else. That's a normal and wonderful thing to do. You can provide service and value for other people. Working underneath somebody is not inherently a bad thing. So I just want to get that out of the way. Entrepreneurship isn't actually for everyone. So knowing if you're the person that should be an entrepreneur is kind of the first step. Now, entrepreneurship is for a lot of people. I will say that. Entrepreneurship is for a lot of people that are probably working a 9 to 5 and just feel like they're stuck in the office grind, right? So I want to be encouraging in the sense that the first thing you should do is find out if you're the type of person that flourishes with entrepreneurship. or working for yourself or running your own business. Because some people, they can't stand the stress of working for yourself because it's not a steady paycheck. There's ebb and flows in business. You have to pay your own taxes, especially at first, until you start doing well enough to hire somebody to do your payroll, your quarterlies, and your end of year tax filings, and all that stuff. Your itemization, your gear depreciation charts. All of that stuff might sound intimidating, but there's a lot of people in this world that can flourish with that kind of bippity bap kind of working, just punch here, punch there, and just kind of all over the place instead of just showing up and doing kind of the same thing over and over again. And so with that being said, with small business, you have to know what you want to do before you should start a small business. There's a lot of work. So it's kind of a two-step answer. I apologize, it's long-winded, but you need to figure out if working for yourself is even something you want to do to begin with. And you need to figure out what you want to do for yourself as well. What kind of business you want to run. Because if you start working for yourself, but you just open up a business that you hate doing, then you're going to be right back where you started. It's not going to do you any good. And that's kind of what happened to me. Like I was explaining with weddings, I liked it at first, but then I kind of figured out I didn't. And so I transitioned to something that I like more, and I'm getting into that now. I've just kind of really started to do that in earnest the past probably couple months.
So how does it feel for you personally?
Mm-hmm.
Because you said you worked quite a few different jobs. You worked for banking, you did Wendy's, you did all kinds of different industries. Yeah. So you have experience working for somebody else. And even though it might not be for everybody to work for themselves, how does it feel for you?
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah. Is it right for you?
Yeah. I understand the question better now. So me personally, it feels, I think the best word I can use to describe it is exhilarating. Because it's not comfortable. But that's a good thing, at least for me. I like the constant back and forth and shifting and adjusting and trying this and failing and doing that instead and succeeding and whatever that might be. So exhilarating is probably the word I would use to describe owning a small business. Because, if you work an office job, this is the sad truth, but if you work an office job, as long as you meet their expectations and you're a good person, you'll probably be able to just keep your job. And there's no, I don't want to say there's no room to grow, because that's not true. There's lots of room to grow. There's lots of opportunities for growth inside of the kind of traditional, employee type work. But there's something different about knowing that you're going to put food on the table because you went out and you killed it and you dragged it back to the cave, and that can apply with working for somebody else, but it just feels more tangible and real when you own your own business and you're doing it.
And also the other thing a lot of people don't realize, when they work for someone else, there is upside for income, but you're still trading time for money. When you work for yourself, you're still trading time for money to a degree, but you have all of this leverage where you can spend tiny amounts of time. And also, if you have a product that's selling, you only had to spend an hour creating, 10 hours, 20 hours creating that product at the start.
Yeah.
And now that time has been spent, and it's not fixed based on time. Your income doesn't really have a real ceiling. In the same way that it does when you work for other people.
Exactly. So I love that you said that. And that brings me back to what I said about optimization. You can only optimize in two ways. You can either optimize to make the same money for less time, or you can optimize for, you could probably do three ways, actually. I'll add a third one just for the fun of it. So working less time for the same money, working the same time for more money, or working less time for more money. Those are kind of the three main ways to optimize. But creating a product and selling it on your own, that's what everyone kind of says, right? And it's true, but it's more difficult than you'd think, not to be discouraging, but just to be a bit realistic. Because once you've created a product, you need to find people to sell it to. So oftentimes, before you actually think about like, oh, I want to create my own product and just sell it to people, well, you need people to sell it to first. And so the best thing that you can probably just start doing is gaining a following or network or an email list or something like that.
Create content for free, maybe.
Like YouTube.
Post stuff on YouTube.
No, that's actually, exactly right. Yeah, that's a great platform to do it. Some people use, Facebook. Some people have websites with email lists, and there's lots of different ways to do it. Launch by Jeff Walker is a great book to look into that. He has a lot of incredible ideas in there, lots of good principles on how to gain an audience to be able to launch a product to sell to people, or even a service, product or service.
But that third option that you talked about,
less time for more money.
Less time, more money. Is that what the wealthy people in the world do, Donovan?
I don't know what the wealthy people, I guess you have to define wealth. My version of wealth is zero debt with a high net worth and a solid income, at least monetary wealth.
And good relationships.
Good relations.
Family.
Incredible marriage, children, that sort of thing. Right. Yeah, exactly. Family. Yeah. Some of the wealthiest people I know don't make a ton of money, but they're so happy and so content because they have bazillion kids or whatever. And it's just like, they're just the happiest people I've ever met. Right.
And then you meet people, too, that have a bunch of money, that are successful business owners, but they're super humble, super good people. And they also have the family life, the low stress. Even though they have the business, they've learned how to change their mindset, organize things to get it to work.
One of the things I really like about Dave Ramsey, he says this all the time. He says, money doesn't create evil people. Money magnifies the type of person you already were. So if you have a good person and they attain riches in turn, monetary riches, generally speaking, if they worked hard for those riches, they will probably continue to be a good and generous person. If they were already kind of a garbage human being, then they'll just be a garbage human being with tons of money. And they'll be able to do more garbage things with that money. And so the misquoted scripture in the Bible is that money is the root of all evil. When in reality, the actual verse says the love of money is the root of all evil. And so the excessive love and obsession of money, where that's your only goal, you're just trying to obtain money for money's sake, riches, that's where evil kind of tends to be rooted, as it says in the scripture. And so the good people can do incredible things with money, but money is a tool. It's amoral. Money inherently doesn't have, almost ironically, it actually doesn't have morality or value. Money doesn't. The piece of paper that you hold in your hand, the dollar bill, the number in your bank account, that's not moral, nor is it valuable. We've only deemed it so, and we've built an entire society, and we all obey the same rules around it. What's actually valuable is the time and the effort and the work that went into the creation of that money. Money is, despite what a politician might tell you, money is created with the trades of goods and services. Money is not created by printing a piece of paper. And so if you create value for somebody, they reward you with pieces of paper with presidents' faces on them, right? Because you did something for them. And the value in that money isn't because it has inherent value. It's not intrinsically valuable. It's only valuable because of the exchange that happened before you got it.
So basically the money itself represents the service, the time that you spent.
It's just the easiest and fastest way to do it without having to go back to bartering.
At least money today, because we did have a point when we were backed by gold, in which case there was intrinsic value. In
because it was tied to a finite resource.
Right.
Yes. And don't get me started on that.
And they said that they would be able to, that you'd be able to exchange for it too at the time, you know?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I'm not actually the biggest fan of gold, funny enough.
You're not a gold bug guy?
No,
well,
I'm not.
raging bullish economies, gold is not the place to put your money.
Well, here's the thing.
At least in large amounts.
Here's my logic around gold. And I'm probably going to upset some people. My logic around gold is that I ask myself why gold is valuable. It's used in, I think, semiconductors, like the building of computers and stuff. So it does have some intrinsic value there, right? It's a commodity that's used to create something extremely valuable, which are electronics. Electronics are very valuable in the sense of what they can do. But aside from that, which I don't think that's actually where the majority of people stake their value in gold, people often the argument I hear is that gold is a hedge against inflation and it's good for economic downturns because even though it doesn't gain a lot of value, it doesn't typically lose a lot of value. It's very middle of the road, super boring commodity. It's almost always just kind of standard value. When
it's calculated versus inflation.
Correct.
Because if you look at the chart without that, it looks like it just goes up. But then when you calculate for inflation, then you look past the past 50, 100 years, it just looks like it went sideways pretty
much.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so again, I judge things based on their usefulness. And gold, inherently, I don't find it personally very useful. It's not useful for anything. And a lot of people are like, well, what if the economy just goes completely down the drain? What if we have a new Great Depression? Well, what are you going to do with the gold in a new Great Depression? What are you going to do with it? Like, you can't eat it. You can't, maybe you can trade with it, but we'll probably still be trading with dollars at that point. Let me tell you, if we aren't trading with the US dollar, if things go so bad, which they're probably not going to, if things go so bad that we're no longer trading with the American dollar, gold isn't the savior. Your savior is, Jesus, right? But
the only one true.
The only one true. But no, in
physically,
the physical thing that's going to save you in a true famine, like a 1920s style or 30s, I guess, 20s, 30s style Great Depression is going to be practical skill. So being able to obtain food and water via your own merits, and then food and water storage, right? Obviously, being members of the Church of Jesus Christ, it's recommended that we have 2 years more or less of food storage, right? And so, food, water, and probably something to defend yourself with as well. And so, not to get you demonetized on YouTube, but pew-pews.
Well, right? I don't have 1,000 subs yet on this account, so there's no monetization here. This is just
not yet.
This is not yet.
Get subscribed. Let's make it happen.
Yeah.
Let's get the dollars flowing to this guy.
Let's get the dollars flowing. And maybe debt paid off, too, would be the only other thing.
Oh, absolutely. Sorry. I didn't even think about that because
they can take your home and stuff.
I've already paid. Jessica and I have no debt. Zero debt. In fact, we don't have credit scores. Our credit scores are what's known as undeterminable. Meaning that we haven't borrowed money.
Used a credit card?
No, we have, but we haven't for so long. It's been 4 years now that we've used anything like that. That the main creditors, like Experian and all those guys, the main credit bureaus, we're invisible to them. We can show proof of payments for bills and internet, phone bills, rent payments, that sort of thing. But we're indeterminable. So yes, in preparation for economic downturns, eliminating debt as fast as humanly possible is one of the best things that you can do to prepare. Don't buy gold, eliminate debt. That would be my not official financial advice. Legally, this isn't official financial advice. This is me personally, what I recommend to people, which I think is the smartest thing that someone can do. So
Yeah. Well, I think that if people are looking for stable coin, as we call it in crypto, they should probably go for gold, huh? I mean, gold does go up in value still, but it's not going to make you wealthy. Like in a bull market, you want to have, like, if you're free from debt and you have the ability to safely invest, you want to have like equity.
You can diversify.
Equity market.
If you want to
Like
diversify
maybe-
in gold, I won't be mad at you. We can still be friends.
Yeah.
That's totally fine. I just think that there are better things that you can do to invest with your money versus gold.
Especially in preparation for potential
economic downturns.
Probably want to
honestly
pay off debt.
pay off debt, build up a nice savings account, and then just maybe store. Don't be like a crazy prepper, but just kind of get some things that can purify water. Get some things, some canned food. A couple of years worth. It's not that expensive. Canned food is 50 cents a can or whatever. But do it in order. Like, again, I'm not trying to plug Dave Ramsey too much here, but we swear by it because we did it, and we are financially so well off now. I mean, we're not like millionaires, but we're so well off that we're comfortable. We're so comfortable.
So there's a lot of people that have $300,000 incomes or outcomes and have a $200,000 income. So even though your income might not be $1 million or whatever right now per year, you're still better than most people.
That's another thing. So two things.
Financial confidence.
Two things. One, common misconception. Millionaire actually has nothing to do with your income. Millionaire is, by definition, your debts minus your assets. Or your assets minus your debts, it's basically your net worth. If you subtract your dues from what you own, then you get your net worth. And so if you have a $250,000 in retirement, you have a $500,000 mortgage, and then you have $250,000 worth in let's say investment property or something like that, and you have zero debt, you're a millionaire. But your income could be $80,000 a year, right? And so so that's the first thing. Second, what you said about outcome and income, I think the statistic is 1 in every 3. I think it's 1 in every 3 people making 6 figures are living paycheck to paycheck. 1 in every 3, 1 in every 4. It's like 20 to 30%. Living paycheck.
So they're way out of their means.
Way out of their means.
They only care what people think about them on the outside a lot of times.
Up to their eyeballs in debt.
Eyeballs in debt.
Yep. Yeah. So that
that confidence that you have financially comes from observing the laws of finance, which is to live with a good budget, to live correctly, not to do it to be seen of other people, but to really do it do it right.
You follow a series of steps, and like I said, the Dave Ramsey baby steps: $1,000 in your emergency fund to start with. Number 2, pay off all your consumer debt as fast as humanly possible minus your mortgage. Number 3, get 3 to 6 months of house expenses saved up in an emergency fund, in a savings account, not in an investment account, a saving account. And then 4, 5, and 6 is kids' college, saving up for paying off your house early, and saving for retirement. And then 7 is to live and give like no one else, which is when you have everything paid off, including the house. You can be outrageously generous with your money, as they say. So,
which is really fulfilling.
That's the way that God wants us to use money. God wants us to prosper. He wants us to become wealthy so that we can use that to, as the scriptures say, feed the hungry, clothe the sick, or clothe the naked, and to heal the sick. Not in the context of how Jesus did, but like in the context of getting people maybe the care that they need, like let's say a single mom who just had a baby who has $50,000 in debt. like starting a GoFundMe and having a bunch of people dump in to pay off her medical debt or something like that. Like that's what God wants us to do with our money.
Yeah, I think it says something like administer in the Book of Mormon. It says administer relief to the sick. So like being able to relieve their financially,
or you go out to eat and your waiter comes to you and you can give be outrageous. If you're wealthy and you're outrageously generous, give him like $1,000 tip. You know what I mean? Like it is something that'll change their life. Or I've heard stories of people that are millionaires that have no debt that can do this, and they hear of like in their local church or whatever a single mom, and they buy him a new car, just cash, just go buy him a car. Like that's the kind of generosity that Jessica and I want to be able to. In fact, specifically, we want to do Trees for Charity.
Trees for Charity.
Yeah, every year we do Trees for Charity. We auction off trees, and all of the proceeds go to a specific charity. So we want to buy a tree. That's our goal with our business, is to buy a tree.
So if you take the time to set up your own life where you have the freedom to do this, once you've actually done that, then you can actually really help other people. But until then, you're kind of just a hindrance on the rest of humanity to a degree. If you've got a bunch of debt and you're not living right, then
if you've ever flown on a plane, what's the first thing they tell you if the oxygen masks drop? Fasten the mask on your own face first, then help your neighbor. And by the way, that applies even if you have small children. You need to make sure that you are taken care of, because if you're trying to fasten the mask on somebody else and you pass out, then neither of you have a mask. And so it's the same way with finances and being generous. If you can't, and business, if you can't figure out how to do it on your own, build a successful business and be financially stable, you're not going to be able to help other people because you're going to be so preoccupied with your own situation. And you won't be able to be, you won't be able to be selfless because you don't even have the money to give away to somebody else. With one exception, throughout all of our journey, Jessica and I, we've never stopped paying our tithing. That is the exception. Tithing, we are 100% believers that tithing is something that is the top of the line item, no matter what your financial state is. Top of the line item before anything else.
Because if you do pay your tithing, you're probably going to figure out a way to handle the rest of your financial stuff later.
You wouldn't even be making money in the first place if God hadn't blessed you with the ability to do so. He's given you literally the breath that you breathe, right? And like he breathed the breath into Adam. And that in a sense comes down to us too. It's that same blessing of life that we've been given. If we don't give that 10% back to him first every single time, then we're taking for granted that wonderful gift that he's given us.
That's so true. I personally love tithing. I'm so thankful for it. Never thought I'd be thankful for giving somebody else 10% of my income, but I'm giving it to God. So
here's the thing. Think of it this way. You're not giving him 10% of your income. He's giving you 90% of his.
That's
and you're
mind blown.
You're just giving the 10% back to him as an act of obedience and faith.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's 100% true. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, Donovan. I think we talked about some really cool stuff, had a great conversation together, and I think people will find it interesting, valuable. So what do you want to plug? I mean, I'll put it in the description box, but
absolutely.
Let's plug you up here.
Let's plug me up. So I just started my new professional business brand, which is called Peak Media. So you can go to peakmediacreative.com. That's my thing that I've done. You can just find me on Facebook, Donovan Kean Anderson, Kean. Anderson S-O-N. It's the celestial spelling, as we know. None of this S-E-N. And you can just find me on Facebook. That's where I make regular posts. And I help businesses, real estate agents, with whatever they might need. And so you can find me on there. You can add me as a friend and follow me just for the kick, just for kicks if you want to. So,
well, perfect. Thanks again for coming on. Maybe in the future we'll have you on again, and as your businesses grow, and who knows. So
sounds great. Appreciate it.
Thanks again, you guys, for tuning in to the 6th episode of the Wisdom in Christ podcast. Hope you guys found it valuable and learned something. And I look forward to seeing you guys in future episodes. As always, peace be unto you.
That's a wrap.